6 hours before the catastrophe, Victoria Williams stood in her sunlit Virginia home, a portrait of composed elegance. At 38, she was the CEO of Skybridge Airlines, one of the youngest black female executives to ever run a major carrier. But this morning, she was just mom. "Marcus, did you pack your tablet charger?" she asked, her voice warm as she helped her 8-year-old twins prepare for their flight to Los Angeles. "Got it, Mom." Marcus bounded down the stairs, his twin sister Maya trailing close behind. Victoria knelt, her gaze level with theirs. "Grandma is so excited to see you both." "Are you sure you can't come with us?" Marcus asked, his voice laced with disappointment. "I wish I could, baby," she said softly. "There's an emergency at our Chicago hub, and I have to handle it personally. But you'll be on a direct flight, and Ms. Carroll will take wonderful care of you." She pulled out 2 small gold pins shaped like captain's wings, each inscribed with the words "Future Captain." The twins' faces lit up as she fastened them to their shirts. "These are to remind you that you're part of the Skybridge family. Everyone on that plane is there to keep you safe." An hour later, they moved through the Reagan National Terminal. Victoria, in a tailored pantsuit and sunglasses, attempted anonymity, but it was a futile effort. Gate agents widened their eyes. A pilot offered a respectful nod. As they approached Gate B8, Carol Henderson was waiting. With silver hair and 3 decades of experience, she had watched Victoria rise from a nervous young attendant to the woman who ran the company. "There are my favorite co-pilots," Carol said, catching the twins in a warm hug. Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. The Chicago crisis was worsening. She knelt for one last embrace. "Be polite, be respectful, and I'll see you tonight. I love you both more than anything in this world." She watched them walk away with Carol, her entire heart walking around outside her body. She had an airline to run, a crisis to manage, never imagining that the greatest crisis of her life was just beginning to unfold. Aboard Flight 447, Maya and Marcus settled into the spacious leather seats of the first-class cabin, their excitement palpable. They were perfect little passengers, whispering over a travel game as other travelers smiled at their well-behaved charm. Everything was peaceful, and then she boarded. Patricia Hartford swept down the aisle like a storm system, late, irritated, and dripping in designer labels. She was on her phone, her voice loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "Yes, I'm flying commercial. Can you believe it? Ronald's jet is in maintenance. Of course I'm in first class, but still, having to board with people." She said the word as if it left a bad taste in her mouth. She stopped short at her seat, 2C, next to Marcus. Her expression soured as she took in the children. "Excuse me," she snapped. "A demand, not a request." Marcus looked up, startled, and pulled in his legs. Patricia stared at him as if he were an insect, then pushed past his knees and threw herself into the seat with an exasperated sigh. "Good morning, ma'am," Carol said, her professional smile in place. "Can I get you anything?" Patricia's eyes were cold. "You can tell me why there are unaccompanied children in first class." "These young passengers are our welcomed guests, ma'am. They are being supervised." "They're children," Patricia said flatly, as if that explained everything. As the plane took off, the twins watched the world shrink below, their faces pressed to the window in wonder. The peace, however, was short-lived. Marcus reached for his backpack, his elbow accidentally brushing against Patricia's arm. It was the lightest touch. She recoiled as if burned. "Watch it." Marcus froze. "I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean to." "Just be more careful," she snapped, rubbing her arm dramatically. She muttered just loud enough for them to hear. "Children shouldn't be in first class." The words hung in the air like a poison. Maya's hand found her brother's and squeezed it tight. Carol, noticing the tension, moved toward them. "Ma'am, I'd be happy to move you to another seat if you'd prefer." "Move me?" Patricia scoffed. "I paid for this seat. They should be moved." Derek, another flight attendant, approached. "Ma'am, is there a problem I can help resolve?" "Yes," Patricia said, her voice rising. "These children are here without an adult, and I want to know who is responsible for them." Derek remained calm. "I can assure you all proper protocols are being followed, ma'am." "Do you know who I am?" Patricia fumed. "My husband is Ronald Hartford, Hartford Industries. One phone call from me and—" "Ma'am," Derek interrupted firmly, "all passengers are treated equally on this aircraft. The children are staying in their assigned seats." Patricia sat down hard, her jaw clenched. The twins, now silent, had abandoned their game. 20 minutes later, Marcus whispered to his sister, "I need to use the bathroom." He turned to Patricia. "Excuse me, ma'am, could you please let me out?" She stared at him, unmoving. She slowly set down her phone, adjusted her bag, stretched her legs, and checked her watch, making him wait. Finally, she rose with an exaggerated sigh, forcing him to squeeze past. When he returned, his face went pale. Her cream-colored Hermes bag was occupying his seat. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his voice trembling. "That's my seat." Patricia didn't look up from her phone. "I'm using it. Go sit in coach where you belong." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. Maya stood up. "Please move your bag. That's my brother's seat." "Sit down, little girl," Patricia sneered. Another passenger, Richard Chen in 3A, spoke up. "Ma'am, that's the child's seat. That's not appropriate." Patricia whirled on him. "Mind your own business." Carol appeared, her expression now like stone. "Ma'am, remove your bag from that seat, now." An ugly look crossed Patricia's face. "I suppose you people stick together, don't you?" The cabin fell silent. The racial implication was thick and suffocating. Carol's voice was ice. "Remove your bag." Patricia snatched her purse away with an irritated huff. "Fine, but I'm filing a formal complaint." As Marcus slid back into his seat, she continued to mutter a stream of poison just loud enough to be heard. No manners, no class, probably on welfare. Later, the plane hit a patch of minor turbulence. It was just a slight bump, but it was enough. Marcus's hand jerked, and a tiny bit of his apple juice, no more than a teaspoon, sloshed onto the leather divider near Patricia's purse. Not on it, but near it. Patricia exploded. "You little brat!" she shrieked, grabbing his arm, her fingers digging into his skin. "That's a $15,000 bag," Marcus cried out in pain and shock. "I'm sorry. It was an accident. Don't touch my brother," Maya shouted, reaching over to pull Patricia's hand away. In that moment, Patricia's rage found a new target. "Keep your filthy hands off me," she snarled at Maya. Her free hand swung back, and the sharp, ugly sound of a slap echoed through the first-class cabin like a gunshot. Time stopped. 8-year-old Maya Williams stumbled backward, her small hand flying to her burning cheek as tears flooded her brown eyes. The perfectly manicured hand that had struck her belonged to Patricia Hartford, whose face was twisted in a mask of fury. Marcus was already sobbing, positioning himself between his sister and the terrifying woman, his small arms spread wide in a futile attempt to protect her. Around them, passengers sat frozen. Phones came out. A businessman in 3A began recording, his face a grim line. The two children stood there, trembling in their crisp, expensive clothing, a darkening red handprint already blooming on Maya's cheek. And Patricia Hartford, consumed by her own toxic rage, had absolutely no idea who their mother was. She had no idea that the woman she had just condemned, the parent she would soon demand be arrested, was the one person capable of bringing her entire world crashing down. Shock bloomed in her eyes, followed swiftly by tears. Tears not just of pain, but of violation, of the sheer, cruel unfairness of it all. Marcus let out a choked sob, scrambling to shield his sister from Patricia. "You hurt her," he cried, his small voice breaking. "You hurt Maya." Already the angry red imprint of a hand began to form on Maya's cheek, a stark violation against her brown skin. The cabin erupted. Gasps echoed. Someone screamed. A man, Richard Chen, shot to his feet, his voice ringing with disbelief. "Did she just hit that child?" A young woman behind them, phone already out, was recording. "I got it. I got the whole thing." Derek, a flight attendant, came running from the galley. "Ma'am, you just assaulted a minor." Patricia was breathing hard, her face flushed, her hand still slightly raised. "She grabbed me. I was defending myself. That boy ruined my bag, and she attacked me." Carol, the children's nanny, pushed past Derek, her arms immediately wrapping around Maya. "Baby, are you okay? Let me see." Maya was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Marcus pressed against them both, his whole body shaking. "This is absurd," Patricia shouted, her voice rising. "Where is their mother? I want her arrested for leaving children unattended." "This is child abandonment. I'm the victim here." Derek's voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with rage. "Ma'am, you need to return to your seat. The captain will be notified immediately." "The captain? I want these children removed. They've assaulted me, damaged my property, and I will not sit here another second with them. Sit down, Richard Chen said, his voice like steel. Right now, before you make this worse. But Patricia was on a roll. I want them off this plane. I want to speak to whoever is in charge of this airline. You want what? Derek interrupted, his patience gone. You just struck an 8-year-old child. There are multiple witnesses. There is video. You are going to sit down, you are going to be quiet, and when we land, you are going to deal with the consequences. The passenger who had supported Patricia earlier was now silent, looking deeply uncomfortable. Even she seemed to realize a line had been crossed. Another flight attendant had already called the cockpit. Moments later, Captain James Morrison's voice crackled over the PA system, calm but absolute. This is your captain speaking. We've been made aware of a disturbance in the first-class cabin. All passengers are required to remain in their seats. We will be met by authorities upon landing in Los Angeles. Patricia's face went pale. Authorities? She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking as she dialed. I'm calling my husband. Ronald will handle this. Carol held Maya, who was crying softly, into her shoulder. Marcus was crying too, holding on to them both. The red mark on Maya's face was no longer just red, it was darkening to a deep, angry crimson. And somewhere over the Midwest, 30,000 feet in the air, Patricia Hartford was about to make the phone call that would seal her fate. If this story has you gripped, smash that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to blow your mind. But let me ask you something, and I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you'd witnessed this? Would you have intervened sooner? Would you have recorded it? Let me know, because this conversation matters. Patricia Hartford made her calls, confident that her money and her husband's name would make this all disappear. She had absolutely no idea that the children she'd just terrorized had a mother who was about to show her what real power looked like. Meanwhile, 1,500 miles away in Chicago, Victoria Williams sat at the head of a vast conference table in Skybridge Airlines headquarters. Her phone lay face down, silenced. For the last 3 hours, she'd been in crisis mode, navigating a tense labor dispute that threatened to ground their entire Midwest operation. The tension in the room had been thick enough to cut with a knife, the negotiations brutal. But Victoria had done what she always did, commanded the storm. She had listened, been firm but fair, and forged a solution. Gentlemen, ladies, she said, standing as the meeting concluded, I think we have an agreement. Thank you for your commitment to Skybridge. Handshakes were exchanged. Reliefs washed over weary faces. Crisis averted. Victoria gathered her papers, exhausted but satisfied. She reached for her phone, switching it back on for the first time in hours. Her screen blazed to life. 23 missed calls. A cold dread, sharp and sudden, coiled in her stomach. Voicemails and texts flooded in. Carol, 5 times. Her assistant Jennifer, 8 times. Head of security Michael Torres, twice. Her hands started to shake. She ignored the voicemails and called Carol directly. Carol answered on the first ring. Victoria. Her voice was trembling, and Carol's voice never trembled. Victoria, there's been an incident with the twins. The world tilted on its axis. Victoria's blood ran cold. The polished conference room, the city skyline, it all dissolved into a roaring in her ears. What incident? Are they hurt? Carol, are my babies okay? They're physically okay, but... Victoria, a passenger struck Maya, slapped her across the face. Victoria couldn't breathe. Her voice was a ghost of itself, a whisper of ice and disbelief. Someone hit my daughter? Someone put their hands on my child? Yes. And Marcus saw it? They're both shaken, but I have them with me. They're safe. I promise. Victoria's free hand gripped the edge of the conference table, her knuckles white. What passenger? What flight? Flight 447. We land in 90 minutes. She was already moving, grabbing her bag. Keep my babies safe, Carol. Tell them Mommy is coming. Tell them. Her voice cracked. Tell them I'm on my way. She hung up and immediately dialed her assistant. Jennifer answered instantly. Victoria, thank God, I've been trying to... Get me on the next flight to LAX. I don't care if you have to ground a plane. I don't care if you have to charter a jet. Get me to Los Angeles. Now. Already on it. There's a Skybridge flight leaving O'Hare in 45 minutes. A car is on its way to take you directly to the tarmac. Good. And Jennifer? Get me everything on Flight 447. Passenger manifest, incident reports, camera footage. Send it all to my tablet. I want to know exactly what happened. Victoria was already running through the building, her heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floors. Employees jumped out of her way. They had never seen their CEO like this, not the brilliant negotiator, not the visionary leader, but a mother on the warpath. Back on Flight 447, Captain James Morrison made his way into the first-class cabin. At 55, James was the very definition of a veteran pilot. He'd flown through hurricanes, engine failures, and medical emergencies. He'd seen it all, or so he thought. Child abuse at 30,000 feet was a new and sickening frontier. He approached row 2, kneeling to bring his considerable presence down to the children's level. His voice was a gentle rumble. "Hi there, I'm Captain Morrison. I fly this plane. Can you tell me what happened?" Marcus, his voice small and trembling, explained. Maya showed him her cheek, the skin still red and swollen. James's jaw tightened. He took photos with his phone. Documentation. Then he stood and turned to Patricia. "Ma'am, assaulting a passenger is a federal offense." Patricia's head snapped up, her denial immediate and vitriolic. "That child assaulted me. She grabbed my arm. I was defending myself. Check the cameras." "We will," James said calmly. "And we have multiple witnesses who say otherwise. You will remain in your seat until we land, where law enforcement will meet the aircraft." Patricia shot to her feet. "You can't do this to me. Do you have any idea who my husband is? Ronald Hartford will sue this airline into oblivion. You'll all lose your jobs." "Ma'am, sit down." "I will not. I demand to speak with whoever runs this airline. I want—" "You'll have that opportunity on the ground," James interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Now, sit down." The sheer authority in his voice made Patricia falter. She sat, but her hand was already reaching for her phone, her voice loud and theatrical, a performance for the entire cabin. "Ronald, you need to listen. I'm being harassed on Skybridge Airlines. These people are treating me like a criminal because I defended myself from 2 unruly children. Yes, I need the lawyers, all of them. We're suing Skybridge for everything they have." She hung up and shot a smug look around the cabin. Some passengers looked away, others stared back with open disgust. Patricia turned her glare on Carol. "This airline is finished, you hear me? My husband owns half the businesses in this state. By the time we're done, Skybridge won't exist." Carol said nothing. She just held the children tighter. Derek came through with an incident report. "We need witness statements." Hands shot up across the first-class cabin. Richard Chen signed his statement with sharp, angry strokes of the pen. The young woman with the phone spoke up. "I have video evidence. I'll testify in court if I have to." Even the man who'd initially smirked in support of Patricia was now intensely fascinated by the in-flight magazine on his lap. One by one, passengers signed, their stories all corroborating the same ugly truth. Patricia Hartford had struck a child. Richard knelt beside Maya and Marcus. "You two are very brave. That lady is wrong. You did nothing wrong. Understand?" Marcus nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you, sir. Your parents should be very proud of you." Patricia seethed in her seat, mentally calculating lawyers and lawsuits. She would destroy this airline. They had no idea who they were dealing with. She had money. She had power. She had her husband's empire. What, she thought, could a budget airline and a pair of crying children possibly do to her? Somewhere over Nebraska, Victoria's emergency flight cut through the sky. She sat in first class, her tablet open, messages and files flooding in. On the outside, she was still. Inside, a storm raged. Carol was texting updates. "Maya is calm now. Marcus is being so protective. They're asking for you." Victoria's heart broke with every word. Michael Torres, her head of security, sent the incident reports, then the camera footage. Victoria pressed play. The video was grainy, but clear enough. She watched Marcus's juice spill, watched Patricia grab his arm, watched Maya try to help. And then she watched as the woman's hands swung back and connected with her daughter's face. The grief in Victoria's eyes didn't just fade. It was burned away, replaced by something cold, hard, and absolute. This was no longer just a mother protecting her children. This was a CEO who had just witnessed an assault on her airline. She opened a message to her legal team. File charges, federal and state, assault on a minor. I want the full weight of the law. Another to Michael. I want her banned from every Skybridge flight for life. Add her to the no-fly list immediately. Another to her PR team. Prepare a statement. We will be handling this publicly and transparently. But as she typed, her mind drifted back to her own childhood, to the times she'd been told she didn't belong, underestimated, dismissed because of the color of her skin. She had built Skybridge to be different. She'd climbed from flight attendant to CEO to create a company where everyone was treated with dignity. Her twins represented that future, a future where two beautiful black children could sit in first class without being questioned. And now, someone had put their hands on that future. On her daughter. Victoria's fingers moved across the screen one last time, a message to Jennifer. Have security meet flight 447 at the gate. Have my legal team standing by. And Jennifer, I'm handling this personally. She looked out the window at the clouds below. Patricia Hartford had no idea what was coming. But she was about to find out. If you're as invested in this as I am, hit that subscribe button, because the confrontation that's about to happen is absolutely epic. You do not want to miss this. The wheels of Flight 447 kissed the tarmac at LAX with a gentle thump. As the plane taxied to the gate, Captain Morrison's voice came over the PA, a sheet of steel. Passengers, please remain seated. We have a situation that requires everyone to stay in place. Patricia stood up anyway. I'm not staying here another second. Sit down, ma'am. The captain's voice cut through the cabin. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Patricia sat, her face flushed with fury. The plane stopped. The forward door opened and two airport security officers boarded, their faces grim. Patricia's face lit up with vindicated triumph. Finally. Authority figures who would understand. She stood again, pointing. Officers, thank God you're here. I need to press charges against these children and their negligent mother. I've been assaulted and verbally harassed. Officer Davis, a tall black man with 20 years on the force, looked at her calmly. Ma'am, he said, his voice even, we're here about an assault complaint filed against you. Patricia's mouth fell open. That's ridiculous! This is outrageous! I want to speak with whoever runs this airline right now! You'll have that opportunity, ma'am, the other officer nodded. As the captain announced that passengers could deplane, a parade of quiet support began. Richard Chen knelt by the twins. This is for your mother, he said, handing Marcus a business card. Tell her she should be very proud. You two showed more courage today than most adults ever do. The woman with the video offered a small, encouraging smile. I sent the video to the airline. That woman can't deny what she did. You two are heroes. One by one, passengers offered words of kindness, looks of sympathy, a currency Patricia, watching with growing horror, could not comprehend. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. She was the victim. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Ronald again. Ronald, they're treating me like a criminal. The police are here. They're acting like I did something wrong. In the jetway, Carol sat with the twins. Marcus's voice was small. Is Mom going to be mad at us? Carol's heart broke. Oh, sweetie, no. Your mom is going to be so proud of how brave you were. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. That lady was so mean, Maya whispered. Why did she hate us? How do you explain racism to an 8-year-old? How do you tell a child that some people carry poison in their hearts? Some people, Carol said carefully, have hate inside them. That's their problem, not yours. You two are perfect, exactly as you are. Then came a sound. The rapid, purposeful click of heels on the jetway floor. Fast, urgent. Carol's head snapped up. She knew those footsteps. Maya, Marcus. The twins turned, and their faces transformed. Mom! They launched themselves from the bench and ran. Victoria Williams appeared around the corner, and she was running too. Her designer heels were forgotten, her CEO composure shattered. This was a mother, and her world had been threatened. She dropped to her knees on the cold floor and caught them both, wrapping her arms around them so tightly it seemed she might never let go. Tears streamed down her face as she pulled back, her hands cupping their small faces. My babies, let me see. Her hand trembled as she gently traced the angry mark on Maya's cheek, and her expression completely crumbled. Oh, Maya, oh, sweetheart. We were brave, Mom, Marcus said, his voice finally breaking. Just like you taught us. We were polite, but she was so mean, and she hit Maya, and I tried to protect her, but… Shh, baby. I know. Victoria was crying openly now, kissing their foreheads, pulling them in again. You were so brave. You were more than brave. You were perfect. I'm sorry I wasn't here, she whispered, her voice a fragile breath against their hair. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom, Maya said, her small voice steady. You're here now. Victoria held them for another long moment, simply breathing them in, feeling the frantic rhythm of their heartbeats against her own, a desperate reassurance that they were real, they were safe. Then she released them and stood. As she rose, a subtle but profound transformation took place. The tears on her cheeks seemed to dry on their own. The vulnerable softness in her eyes hardened into polished obsidian. Her shoulders squared, her spine straightened, and the grieving mother receded, making way for the chief executive. She turned to Carol, her voice now crisp and clear. Thank you for protecting them. Victoria's gaze turned to ice. Now, where is she? Carol gestured back toward the aircraft. Still on the plane, with the officers. Victoria gave a single, sharp nod. Decisive. She looked down at her children. You two stay right here with Miss Carol. Mommy has to handle something. She turned and walked back down the jetway, the sharp click of her heels on the floor echoing with the same authority that had built an empire. Every step was a declaration. Every movement radiated a power that was absolute. Inside the first-class cabin, Patricia was still blustering into her phone, pacing in the aisle between the officers. Ronald, I'm telling you, this airline is… She looked up as a shadow fell over her. A woman was walking down the aisle, a beautiful black woman in an impeccable business suit. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon, her makeup flawless despite the faint, telltale signs she had been crying. She moved with the quiet confidence of someone who owned not just the plane, but the world it flew in. Patricia's face shifted from outrage to opportunity. Finally, management. Someone who would understand. Finally, she snapped, lowering her phone. Are you with management? I need to file a formal complaint against your incompetent staff and those unruly children. I have been treated abominably, and I demand… Victoria stopped 6 feet away. Her eyes locked on Patricia with an intensity that could melt steel. Her voice was calm, quiet, yet it seemed to fill the entire cabin, silencing everything else. I am management. Emboldened, Patricia stood taller. Good. Then you'll understand when I tell you that this airline's reputation is about to be utterly destroyed. My husband. Allow me to introduce myself. Victoria's voice cut through the tirade like a surgeon's scalpel. My name is Victoria Williams. I am the Chief Executive Officer of Skybridge Airlines. The color drained from Patricia's face. Her mouth fell open, a silent O of disbelief. You're the CEO? I am. Victoria took one deliberate step closer. And those children you assaulted? They are my children. A profound silence descended upon the cabin. Even the officers seemed to hold their breath. Patricia stammered, her mind visibly short-circuiting as the pieces clicked into a horrific new reality. There must be… I didn't know. Victoria tilted her head, a gesture of cold curiosity. You didn't know they were my children? Or you didn't know that putting your hands on a child has consequences? Attempting a recovery, Patricia's lawyer brain sputtered to life. This is a misunderstanding. The girl grabbed me. I was defending myself. Stop talking. The two words were spoken without volume, but the authority behind them was so immense that Patricia's mouth snapped shut. Victoria turned her attention to Officers Davis and Rodriguez. I will be pressing full charges. Assault on a minor. I have a dozen witnesses, clear video evidence, and the entire weight of my corporate legal team is prepared to prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law. You can't do this! The words tore from Patricia's throat in a shrill cry. My husband will sue you. He'll sue this airline into the ground. Ronald Hartford owns half the businesses in this state. You have no idea who you're messing with. Victoria turned back to her, and her expression was pure ice. Your husband can certainly try. But Ms. Hartford, you put your hands on my 8-year-old daughter, on my airline, in front of a plane full of witnesses who filmed it. She took one final step forward, her voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. And you are about to learn, in the most public and permanent way, that money does not buy you immunity. Patricia Hartford stood frozen, her expensive clothes suddenly feeling like useless, flimsy armor. Her world was tilting on its axis. Officers Davis and Rodriguez escorted her off the plane. She was still talking, a frantic, desperate litany of threats and names. You're making a huge mistake. Ronald Hartford, Hartford Industries, you have no idea what you've just done. Victoria followed, a composed and silent shadow. Her heels clicked a steady, unhurried rhythm on the jetway floor. They emerged into the terminal, and that's when Patricia saw him. Ronald Hartford stood near the gate, a silver-haired man in his early 60s, wearing a suit that screamed old money. He was looking at his phone, his face a grim mask. Ronald! Patricia's voice cracked with relief. Ronald, thank God. Tell them who we are. Tell them they can't do this. Ronald looked up, and the expression in his eyes made her falter. There was no warmth, no support, only a vast, cold disappointment. Patricia, he said, his voice flat. What have you done? What have I done? I defended myself. Those children attacked me, and now... I've been watching the video, Patricia. He cut her off. It's everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, every major news outlet has already picked it up. Her face went bone white. What video? Officer Davis spoke gently. Multiple passengers filmed the incident, ma'am. The footage clearly shows you striking the child. Patricia's knees buckled. She reached for Ronald's arm, but he took a deliberate step back, out of her reach. He then turned to Victoria, his gaze that of a man calculating catastrophic losses. Ms. Williams, he said, his voice laced with a gravity he couldn't fake. I am deeply, profoundly sorry for my wife's actions. Victoria's expression remained unchanged. Your apology means nothing to me, Mr. Hartford. Your wife assaulted my daughter. Ronald nodded, accepting the rebuke. He turned back to Patricia. I can't protect you from this. Her face crumpled. What? Ronald, we're a team. You have to... Our lawyers, he stated, each word a nail in the coffin of their life together. We'll be in touch regarding the divorce. The words hung in the sterile airport air. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Ronald? I have spent 30 years building a reputation, Patricia, building a legacy. I will not watch you burn it to the ground because you couldn't control your temper. He glanced at his phone. The board is already calling. Our stock is plummeting. Partners are issuing statements distancing themselves from us. But I'm your wife. You were. He put the phone in his pocket, a gesture of finality. He turned and walked away without a backward glance. Ronald? Ronald! She cried, but he was gone. Officer Rodriguez touched her arm. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Her voice rose to a shriek of denial. No, this isn't happening. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't think. That's the problem, ma'am, Officer Davis said quietly. You didn't think. They placed the handcuffs on her wrists. Patricia Hartford, a woman defined by her status and wealth, was led away in tears, her mascara tracing black rivers down her cheeks as travelers stopped and stared, their phones held aloft. Victoria watched until she was out of sight. Her expression was cold, unmoved. Justice, swift and complete. Jennifer, her assistant, approached. Victoria, the media is here. They're requesting a statement. Victoria took a deep, steadying breath. Set up a press conference right here, 20 minutes. Are you sure? I'm sure. Victoria looked back at her children, who were watching her with wide, uncertain eyes. This needs to be said. Publicly. 20 minutes later, Victoria stood at a podium. Cameras flashed, microphones bristled. She looked directly into the lenses, composed and powerful. This afternoon, a passenger on a Skybridge flight assaulted my 8-year-old daughter, she began. That passenger has been arrested and will face the full consequences of her actions. But this incident is larger than one person. It represents the prejudice and casual racism that families of color face every single day. My children were polite, well-behaved, first-class passengers, and yet they were targeted and assaulted simply because someone decided they didn't belong. Her voice grew stronger, resonating with conviction. Skybridge Airlines has always had a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination. Today, I am announcing that policy will be strengthened. We are implementing mandatory, comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff. We are creating a new passenger code of conduct with clear, unshakable consequences for such behavior. And we are making a $5 million donation to civil rights organizations in the names of my children, Maya and Marcus Williams. A reporter called out, "Ms. Williams, how is your daughter?" For the first time, a crack appeared in her composure. Her eyes glistened. "She is brave, she is strong, and she is perfect." She paused, collecting herself. "And she is learning that standing up to hate matters. My children, and every child, deserve to travel with safety and dignity. Skybridge Airlines will always stand for that." 3 months later, on a bright morning, Maya and Marcus Williams walked down the aisle to first class. They were a little older, a little taller. Maya settled into seat 2A with a book. Marcus took 2B with his tablet. They were peaceful. Carol appeared with 2 glasses of juice, her smile as warm as ever. "Here you go, my favorite co-pilots." In the cockpit, Victoria stood with the captain, watching the pre-flight checks. She was flying with them today. "How are they?" she asked quietly. He smiled. "Perfect little passengers, Victoria, as always." She returned to the cabin and slid into the seat beside them. Maya looked up. "Mom, can we talk about what happened with that lady?" Victoria gave them her full attention. "We can talk about anything." Marcus's voice was small. "She was mean because we're black, wasn't she?" Victoria didn't hesitate. "Yes, baby. Some people judge others by the color of their skin instead of who they are inside." "But that's not fair," Maya said, her brow furrowed. "You're right. It's not fair at all. But do you know what you two taught me that day?" They shook their heads. "You taught me that grace is more powerful than hate. You stayed true to who you are, and because of that, everyone on that plane saw the truth." Maya looked down at the small, gold, future captain pin on her shirt. "You showed her that we belong here, Mom." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes, but she was smiling. "You have always belonged. And nobody," she whispered, wrapping her arms around them both, "gets to tell you differently." As the plane pushed back from the gate, Victoria looked around the cabin she had built, filled with a diverse tapestry of faces, families, business travelers, couples young and old. "This," she murmured to herself, "is why I built it." The plane climbed into a limitless blue sky. Maya looked out the window at the world shrinking below, and a small, confident smile touched her lips. She was exactly where she belonged, and on her shirt the small gold pin caught the light, a tiny, brilliant promise of the future.